Gosh, this feels like the bar mitzvah I always wanted. Mr. Minsky, CEO and President of Toronto UJA, Ms. Lefton and the UJA leadership, esteemed donors. Gail, I think these might be your glasses. Hagar Brodich, here to sound the voice of the voiceless, to remind us that no gathering is complete while the hostages still languish in Hamas captivity. Esteemed donors, ladies and gentlemen, if the Jewish people had an unofficial motto to unite us from Seattle to Sydney, it would be, of course, Am Israel Chai, the people of Israel live. A fact, a promise, a threat, a prayer, a demand, a message of defiance, a vow that despite or because of everything the world keeps throwing at us, we live life to the fullest and we love it. But if I had to propose an official slogan to emblazon under the Star of David, as you in Canada have Amare Usqua ad Mare, from sea to sea, not from the river to the sea, I would choose another slogan to capture the soul of Israel. Hitna'ari me'afar kumi, livshi bigdei tifartech ami. Arise now, shake off the dust, don the robes of thy glory, my nation. Timeless words from Lecha Dodi, from Kabbalat Shabbat, because that is the story of the Jewish people, our timeless ability to rise Misho'ah litkuma, from disaster to rebirth. We pick ourselves up from calamity, shake off the dust, and in the deadliest black of night, reveal our true glory. In crisis, we find opportunity and strength. On October 7th, Israeli society suffered its darkest hour and I believe rose to its finest hour. We came together. We put our infighting aside, for a while at least. And we did whatever we could, whatever it took, to defend our homes and help each other get through this. Israel's brave citizens rose to the challenge. But they were not alone, and it's the next verse of Lecha Dodi that captures the soul of the Jewish diaspora. Hit'oreri, hit'oreri, kiva orech kumi ori. Wake up, wake up. Your light is coming, rise up and shine. Lo tevoshi velo tikalmi. Be not embarrassed, be not ashamed. We are in the grips of a diaspora awakening. A great diaspora awakening. The diaspora has awoken. It is shining its inner light, shaking off its embarrassment, fighting unapologetically in the spirit of that credo, Hit'oreru, hit'oreri, wake up. Because when Hamas launched this infernal war with the October 7 massacre, it pulled the trigger not only of a regional war in which Israel is under attack on 7 fronts: Gaza, West Bank, Yemen, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Iran itself. It also fired the opening shot of a global war on the Jews, which means that we are in fact under attack on 8 fronts. A war that you in Toronto have felt so keenly, with the shooting at the Beis Chaya Moshka Elementary School, the cries of intifada outside the Mount Sinai hospitals, the glorification of October 7th at U of T, just the tip of the iceberg of the anti-Semitism that has reared its ugly head here in Canada. The diaspora has woken up. And whatever vestiges of complacency still existed at nightfall on October 6th were washed away with the global flood that broke at dawn on October 7th. Jews who did not feel connected suddenly grasped what side they were on. Jews enmeshed in modern society suddenly felt betrayed, but turned to find strength with each other. Jews on campuses forced to wade through the college tentifada suddenly discovered that they are not Gen Z, they are Gen Zionists. And I am so proud to hear that Maccabean fighting spirit from Shabbos Kestenbaum here tonight. And that fire in his belly, speaking for so many Jewish students who refuse to roll over and be walked all over. And alongside the October 7 Jews are so many others like you here, already deeply devoted to our global Jewish family, who redoubled their generous support in word and in deed to help us wake up and rise up, shake off the dust, shine out our light, bring back the hostages, and stand firm together in the face of the gathering storm. The great diaspora awakening has begun. October 7th, 2023 was an inflection point in Jewish history. The only question is, in what direction? Nothing will ever or can ever be the same. The worst day in Israel's history, the worst day in Jewish history, since the chimneys of Europe still churned. We will forever understand everything through the lens of that Black Sabbath. We have not even begun to register what it means to have experienced the bloodiest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust on our own sovereign soil. Infants snatched from their parents' arms, hiding in closets as their parents were slaughtered, abducted into the necropolis of Gaza. When the Jews of Kishinev fell prey to October 7th style atrocities back in 1903, Chaim Nachman Bialik described the carnage in his epic poem, In the City of Slaughter. The son who was not murdered found the spurned cadaver of his father on the ground. Bialik's report inspired a diaspora awakening, but that one was not enough and not in time to save the Jews of Europe. And now the diaspora awakens again, confronted with blood-curdling Bialik sequels on live TV, in the kibbutz of slaughter, in the music festival of slaughter, in the terror dungeons of slaughter. Jews around the world pouring into Israel to do whatever they can, to bear witness, to lend a shoulder to hostage families, to pack food for displaced families, to barbecue for soldiers at the front, to pick lemons and avocados, to be part of this moment in history and be able to tell their children, Hineni, I was there for my people when they needed me. I've met so many solidarity missions, including from the Toronto UJA just last week. Some of you are here, and I apologize if I'm being repetitive. And they all tell me the same thing. We came here to Israel to be strengthened, to give strength, and we leave strengthened. Good. Because we need a strong and powerful diaspora to stand up for the free West against barbarism, to shame and cast out the forces of hate, to keep your countries loyal to their core values when so many would push them off a radical cliff. And the task of building our national home in Israel must be a partnership between Israelis and diaspora Jews. It always has been. 2,000 years ago, Jews across the diaspora showed their support by donating to maintain the temple in Jerusalem, a building that even the harshest critics of the government in Jerusalem had to admit was the most beautiful building that the Roman Empire had ever seen. By the way, back then donations were only half a shekel. Inflation's a killer. The Jewish people today are under attack on 8 fronts, including the diaspora, and you don't abandon a front, because then it will be overrun by the enemy hordes. If you want to make Aliyah because life is more vibrant under the Mediterranean sun, then the Anglo community in Israel needs reinforcements, and I promise you, Frishman Beach in the winter beats Muskoka any day. But if you choose to stay here in the embrace of this wonderful and generous community, then there is nothing more Zionist, nothing more authentically Jewish than to bravely stand your ground and stand up for yourselves. Stand up for yourselves. Stand up for yourselves, as I know the Canadian Jewish community has been doing with such tenacity. And I'm sure that next week's Walk for Israel, the biggest Israel solidarity walk in the world, will be bigger and louder than ever. Stand up for yourselves and for us by building strong Jewish communities, by fostering your children's Ahavat Israel, cultivating their Jewish identities, teaching them to argue and to reason, and yes, self-defense, because we're there. We need a strong diaspora, just as we have always done. For where would we have been without Queen Esther? The ultimate diaspora heroine had a choice. She could have kept her head down, but she risked having it cut off. She did not have to stick her neck out. She'd made it in Persian society. She was Persian passing. She could have ignored the cries of her people to live a life of perfumed luxury. She could have told Mordechai, I'll be safe here, you're on your own, and try to weather the storm as the anti-Semites du jour chanted for the destruction of the Jews from the river to the sea, from the Indus River to the Mediterranean, of course, back then. But she knew there was no hiding behind alabaster palace walls, and the forces that rise up in every generation would catch up with her too, eventually. And without a strong Jewish world to back her up, she would find herself with her back against the wall, alone. Instead, Esther became the greatest Jewish lobbyist in Jewish history. Seriously, the king was willing to give her up to half the kingdom. Who has such power nowadays? Because Esther understood Mordechai's timeless warning. There is no way to keep your head down and hope that the storm will pass. Do not imagine that you, of all the Jews, Mordechai warned her, will escape with your life by being in the king's palace. On the contrary, if you keep silent in this crisis, relief and deliverance will come to the Jews from another quarter, while you and your father's house will perish. And who knows, perhaps you have attained such a royal position precisely for this moment. And who knows, maybe all of you here in Toronto have reached your positions precisely for this crisis too. Israel and the diaspora rise and fall together. There is no world in which Israel sinks while the diaspora somehow swims, or the diaspora sinks while Israel somehow stays afloat. Because while Israel has been enriched by every subsequent wave of immigration to create our multicultural, multi-ethnic democracy, only the Jewish diaspora can ensure that the free world remain free, because no society that hounds its Jews out can ever claim to be free. Because as one of your young donors told me just this morning at the breakfast meeting, if Jews are not safe in Canada, they will not be safe anywhere. We need you to make the world safe for Israel so that Israel can make the world safe for Jews. Because our safety and liberty are intertwined. The Jewish people simply cannot afford to live in a globe in which the allegations currently being cast at the Jewish state become the baseline of common knowledge, in which people genuinely believe that Israel is committing genocide or is guilty of being an apartheid white settler colony. Because forget what that means for Israel's ability to keep itself safe. If the unholy alliance defaming Israel now gets its way, Jews around the world will all be held guilty by association, and diaspora life will be unsafe, this time with no safe haven. And that is why we need you to keep fighting for Israel, because fighting for Israel means fighting for yourselves. The fearless Jewish diaspora is awakening, and together we can awe the world with what the Jewish people can achieve when we join forces and stare down adversity together. I believe that something truly great is happening in the Jewish world right now, in the shadow of October 7th. And you who have reached such a position precisely for this crisis, are so much of the reason why. It can be difficult to see through the darkness, with soldiers falling every day, cries of globalize the intifada along the way, 125 hostages still languishing in the Hamas terror dungeons. Yet there to help us banish the darkness, the great diaspora awakening offers a glimmer of light. And for me personally, the work of the diaspora and the hard work of former diaspora Jews, the Olim in Israel, is what keeps our new project going as we fight Israel's information war from civil society, building the Israeli Citizen Spokesperson's Office, a team of ordinary citizens speaking up for our country and our embattled people at a time of unprecedented emergency. It couldn't happen without the diaspora or without Olim in Israel. From a distance, writes the great Israeli poet Yehuda Amichai, everything looks like a miracle. But up close, even a miracle doesn't look like that. Even someone who crossed the Red Sea when it split, writes Amichai, saw only the sweaty back of the one in front of him and the motion of his big legs. Up close, we see only sweaty backs and the big legs of our people marching on, of parents fighting for their daughters' freedom, to redeem them from their rapist captors, of sons and daughters fighting to bring down the Hamas terror regime that gave Holocaust survivors flashbacks to the Nazis. Up close next week, you will see only the sweaty backs and the big legs of tens of thousands of Canadian Jews and allies marching in the walk for Israel, standing up to the anti-Semites hell-bent on globalizing the Intifada. Looking around, you too will see walls of water that threaten to collapse at any time, but you have time before it is too late. Yet when we zoom out, we see that this long line of sweaty backs and big legs is itself a miracle that the Jews have the power to fight back, a miracle they have the power to answer back, the power to shake off the dust and rise and shine our light, because Am Yisrael Chai is a revolt against history. And the great diaspora awakening happening right now in this country, in this room, is a miracle. A miracle that is not a magic solution, but an opportunity. An opportunity to stand up for decency, to stand up for humanity, to stand up for the hostages, to stand up for our soldiers, to stand up for the people and the state of Israel before it is too late. Every Jew in the world must play their part and make their unique contribution. For as we learn in the ethics of the fathers, לא עליך המלאכה לגמור, ולא אתה בן חורין לבטל ממנה. It is not your duty to finish the work, but neither are you at liberty to neglect it. The road is long, but 15 million individual steps across the whole Jewish world will take us all the way. We will rebuild. We will dance again. And thank you for being there. Thank you for your brothers and sisters in Israel so that they can rebuild and dance again with you too. The diaspora has awoken, and it is never going back to sleep. Thank you, everyone. Am Yisrael Chai.